Hello, everybody, and good morning from me and John over here on the west coast of North America. I'm your Californian friend. John's your Canadian composer, and we're here for another dialogue. Good morning, John. How are you doing, my friend?
Not too bad. The sky is slightly orange this morning, Shane, here.
I wonder why.
Yeah, those evil Canadian forest fires, those evil.
Sasquatch, the
Yeah,
arsonist.
yeah, that's right.
Absolutely. No, it is going to be an interesting discussion today. I think this is an important one as we kind of talk about the future they warned us about, right? Who's they? Of course, that's ambiguous, but that's going to allow us to talk about kind of a pretty solid spread of topics. We have John, who did a little bit of work, quite a bit of work putting together a list of some nonfiction things. I have two of my favorite books here. You got 1984, Fahrenheit 451. We can talk a little bit about those and the kind of dystopian element of those writers. What was Bradbury and Orwell? What were they trying to tell us? What signs did we miss? And just kind of like let's talk about where we are currently and how did we kind of have all of this warning and still find ourselves facing the challenges that we're facing today.
That's pretty cool. In fact, I agree with you that starting with a brief resume of those two novels is a great place to start because of when they were written and what they foreshadowed or predicted could happen. Just let me read something that came in my email box. I won't say from whom today, but kind of related. The top 5 big oil companies just collectively cashed in over $48 billion in the last 3 months alone. We think this is obscene, that money belongs to households struggling to pay their bills and communities on the front lines of climate disaster. But you'll never guess who agrees with us.
Who?
Donald Trump.
Oh,
Apparently, Donald Trump criticized Exxon and Chevron for making too much money based on a shortage, claiming they should give some of that back to the public. Now, you and I both know that the only reason Trump would say something like that, considering his huge investment in fossil fuels, is because some voters that used to vote for him aren't voting for him anymore. So it's just theater. When it comes to Trump, it's always just theater. He doesn't believe anything. But I just thought I would lead off with that.
yeah. I mean, to
reality.
your point, Americans have spent 73 billion additional dollars on gas since this war was started by Donald Trump and his BB,
It's
right?
real.
So,
Right.
The cost is there, and it's like little late, bro.
Yeah.
Little late.
Yeah.
We're already $73 billion
Yeah.
down.
Gone. Gone.
We're already out 73 billion. So
It's gone.
what do you what's your answer
Yeah.
there,
So-
Mr. Don?
Yeah, exactly. So let's start with burning down the house.
Yeah.
Why don't you talk about Fahrenheit? What is it? Fahrenheit what? I always forget the number.
451. We'll talk about this novel generally. We actually did a whole episode on Fahrenheit 451,
just
which
the
I will
basic-
link.
Yeah, just the basic premise is all we need about burning down houses.
Yeah. So the idea is that in this world, and Bradbury, he wrote this book in, I want to say it was the 20s, 29 maybe. I forget because it says this book is 50 years old, but it was published. This version was published in the early 2000 or maybe the 90s. Let's see, it's copyrighted in 1953. Okay,
That's correct.
yep. So
Just double check that for you.
yep. And so what is this book about? The idea is that in this future, people don't read anymore. The fire department, their job is to burn books. Houses are now fireproof. So it's not a matter of your house burning down. When the fire department comes, it's with flamethrowers if you have knowledge, right? Books in your home.
Right.
And it's the idea is that particularly Fahrenheit 451, which is pretty similar to 1984, is that you also have this element of basically disassociation, or this idea of the parlor where you have these walls and you participate in this family that is on a screen, that you're able to basically participate in a life that is not your own, and become sedentary and not be curious, not read. In Fahrenheit 451, this is a world where you're supposed to go so fast on the freeway that you can't even see the grass, that you can't pick out a flower, and that if you slow down, you'll get pulled over and go to jail. If
Right.
you ask questions, that's very frowned upon. You'll be beat up by the other kids. And it's this idea that when you turn these forces in society against having knowledge, against understanding and tapping into the human psyche, and all that information that exists through reading and language, you get to a point where your society starts to regress into something that's frankly barbaric,
Right.
and very,
Yeah.
dystopian, right?
Yeah. So it's what's happening in the book is that there has become a social consensus that knowledge is evil, and that you must simply follow what Big Brother, in the case of the Orwell novel, is saying. So, in other words, everybody has been hoodwinked or convinced through fear and intimidation and legislation. They've been all forced into a situation where everyone fears everyone else, uh, that they won't conform to the given diktats of the dictatorship, right? And
Mhm.
that's the fundamental thing that was, I think, visionary, is that he was showing. He didn't show step by step how this society evolved step by step, slowly, one thing at a time, until you get all of the population watching out for people who read books, right?
Right.
One of the central metaphors in there that I think is absolutely a genius is the room you referred to,
Yes.
where the wife has three screens on three walls and wants enough money to close it in
Mhm.
completely, to
Yeah.
put the fourth wall screen on so that she is completely surrounded by this fake family, virtual family, 24/7.
Yeah.
And she is already completely alienated from her husband, as become evident when she finks on him and their house gets burnt down. So it is just that whole metaphor of putting in the fourth wall and completely taking over your entire life. That metaphor isn't realized, of course, because the house gets burnt down. But
Yeah.
it's really an incredibly visionary novel. Now, do we need to talk about 1984?
We can talk really briefly about it. It's a little bit more known. If you've heard the term Big Brother, you already kind of know about 1984. One of the most important novels, I think, to read these days, particularly because all of the strategies that are being used against us, right, the wider populace, are outlined here.
Yeah.
And there is the things they're doing now, and there's also the things that they want to do and are working towards doing right now.
Right.
There's, to give you just a really quick example, one of the first things that really kind of gets you into the scene in 1984 without taking away all of the really important realizations that are in the book. And I encourage you to read it if you haven't, and even if you've read it before, going back and reading it again is invaluable in a time like this, because it's really just the ability for humans to recognize patterns and forecast using understanding of the way humans act. Right? These were smart individuals who saw the writing on the wall, and they did what they could to try and let us know. But the example I would like to give you is this idea of the main character, Winston. He has no privacy in his home. but he wants some degree of privacy. So what he does is he knows there's one little corner in his house that he can't be seen by the, I believe it's called a telescreen,
Right.
and that is effectively a surveillance, propaganda, radio, all these things at once. But there's one corner in his house where they can't see him, and he goes to that corner where he has a diary hidden, and within that diary he writes his own diary. And if that were ever to be discovered, he knows he would be disappeared by the thought police, because he's having individual thought. He's contemplating whether or not the system can exist that way. And he has to be so careful, to the point where the neighbor's children, should they discover that he's doing this, they would report him to the authorities.
Everybody would.
Children are co-opted to report on their parents. That all of this society is watching you all the time, right? And so that is pretty much the example I would give. And when you take that and say, well, how different is that from all of my internet traffic being subject to review by the government with no protections for myself, right? So, John, I mean, I don't know if you want to add kind of a little bit to that.
I mean, that's it. It's the surveillance state. You know, the military-industrial complex became the military surveillance industrial complex.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And that is a term, maybe not in that order, but that's used to describe essentially the world that Orwell predicted that we are essentially in right now.
Yeah.
Now, as you know, Trump is trying to use all of this data collection to let ICE agents just go anywhere they want and persecute whoever they want, kidnap whomever they want. We are already in Orwell's 1984, in the U.S. especially. I mean, the rest of the world is so far somewhat protected from this development, but I would say that ICE is a perfect example of the thought police.
Yeah.
They are the thought police. Exactly. The data, they're collecting your data. What is your data? Your data is what you express online. If you express dissent online and they've tracked it and they know your address, they can come and bash your door in, kidnap you, and take you away, disappear you. Where are the 1,200 people from Alligator Alcatraz? Where are they? We don't know.
I have a theory, but it's just a theory. I'll tell you this. At the same time, there happened to be 1,000 people disappear, and then Elon Musk had this weird facility in Hawaii where he was testing his Neuralink chips, and then suddenly he gets an order of like 1,000 when he was like last year, the year before. Not even a percent. It was a percentage, a very small percentage of that. It's very odd, a coincidence that 1,000 people disappear and then they end up going to a facility that's across the street from a medical facility in Hawaii, where they could very easily be running human experimentation on people and putting chips in their head. And guess what? I mean, is that really so strange? Is that really so weird?
No,
that they
not
would
really.
do that?
You know, I think I read that somewhere, the one you just talked about.
Yeah.
About this coincidence. And, you know, I don't think these things are coincidences anymore. The information's coming out, and that's one of the issues that they find quite frightening, is that they're having trouble controlling the narrative anymore. The whole premise of both of those novels is that the narrative is completely controlled by these dictators, right? And that's not the case right now.
Nope.
You know, Trump is trying to shut down media as much as possible to shut down dissent. But as long as we still are doing what we are doing right now, and as long as people can continue to publish books, and if people don't read those books, at least get interviewed about them, then I think that there's a possibility for us to make the change. But of course, the change has to be a fundamental cultural change, which we've talked about on this show quite a few times. And what I just want to shift to right now is an observation I made just before we started, Shane. I said to you, you know, I've got a list of 10 books here.
Yeah.
Most of which I haven't read, but I have accumulated some of the knowledge that's in these books, enough to already know that we need to take the action.
Yeah.
But you just go through this list of books, and most of it's derived from a list that I got. You'll love the URL. The website's called treehugger.com. And yeah, I think that's it. Treehugger.com, and Greta Thunberg is the last book. Scroll to the top. You'll see the first book is an indigenous book called Braided Sweetgrass. There are tons of these books now written by indigenous authors talking about what it's like to, be born and raised in indigenous culture and what the connection to the earth means, and the husbandry uh, of the, the environment. You don't deplete your resources. You make sure that they're always there for you for 7 generations going forward. That's a very typical indigenous concept,
Yeah.
rather than our concept of, this week's profit margin. you know,
Yeah, well, I just want to jump in really quick because I can tell you my own personal experience, having been to Ecuador, Peru, Argentina, Chile, right? All these places, all of them have very strong indigenous cultures, right?
right,
These are the Incas, and a lot of these pre-Inca societies, all very much based in a coexistence with natural resources, to respect their natural resources. A lot of the resistance you see in these countries is
right,
these indigenous people stopping and fighting against, the destruction, pollution, and basically rape of their natural lands.
yeah,
And this is something that I took home with me.
right.
I genuinely believe that that is the way forward. That
Yeah,
if there is a way forward, it's that.
well,
So
exactly. And they refer to nature just as nature, right? The whole concept of resource cannot be mentioned anymore without the following word, extraction, because that's all
mhm,
we do. Resource extraction means take it away,
yeah.
not replenish it, not make sure it continues to thrive, but to take it away. We can't take away anymore. We're done with takeaway. We have to change the fundamental culture, and we have to, I think, make sure that in our advocacy, we have to get rid of the extractive industries. That's the political thing that we have to do, because we can't individually do that. But as an individual, you have to make choices that, with your dollars, that disempower and make poor all of these extractive industries. That means when you go into the drugstore and you see an entire aisle with plastic bottles, you say, no, I'm not going into this store anymore. And you go to the local, reuse, recycle shop, and you get your thing that's in powder form in a recyclable bag or whatever. That's the thing you can do individually, but that's just so small compared to,
Yeah.
1 hour's emissions from any kind of mine, right? So
Let
that's
me let me give you another solution, right? In terms of solutions, right? There's a patch of garbage larger than Texas floating in the Pacific Ocean. We don't talk
uh,
about the Pacific garbage patch anymore. That's old news, right?
well,
But guess what? There's people who had figured out how to turn plastic into fucking fuel, gas.
yes, that's true. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
so explain to me why we're not using all the plastic in the ocean to make gasoline so we can turn off the wells to reduce emissions.
right,
Why? Because they refined that plastic with only solar energy.
right,
It's not like the alternatives aren't there. They've always been there. It's like our discussion last week, if you caught that, about how corporations use governments and taxpayer money to recoup lost opportunity. It's very much within that same thing.
right.
So I want to just kind of add that as well, but please keep
Yeah, I mean,
going.
the thing is, so I've got this list of 10 books is pretty good.
Do you want me
I
to scroll?
you just do a quick scroll, and we'll stop with each title, and I'll just briefly mention Merchants of Doubt. That one's about how corporations hire fake scientists to create doubt about the science surrounding tobacco causing cancer, ozone layer, all of the warnings that scientists have been, giving us for almost a century. Um, Corporations hire their own fake scientists to create doubt, and then doubt means that the population thinks, oh well, there's some doubt about that, and
It's an uncomfortable reality, right? So if you can cast enough doubt, people will absolutely select to not not worry about it, right?
Right.
Well, they're going to choose comfort.
That's human nature. You want to have a good day. That's normal, and they want to take advantage of that fact of human nature, that we'd rather just have a nice day, right? And An Inconvenient Truth is one of the books down the list you'll see as well. The End of Nature, I haven't read that book. It sounds like a really good one. That one was published in 1989. So Silent Spring is the start of the environmental movement, with a publication of a book called Silent Spring by Rachel Carson, where she she basically condemns the widespread use of pesticides, because that's going to, poison our food and our water and so on. That's the first really important book.
Superbugs, because bugs evolve really quick, because they have millions of offspring in a single season, and evolution is just enough generations that any kind of change or adaptation is carried forward. So when you spray everything with pesticides, that one bug that can get around those pesticides, what happens? It reproduces, and then it makes 10,000. And then within a year, you have a resistant strain, which means you have to add more harsh and dangerous and awful chemicals, which actually destroy the earth that you're farming. So I mean, it's ridiculous.
So tell me, Shane. So tell me, Shane, have you read Silent Spring?
I have not.
You have not, but you've just articulated, part of the argument in Silent Spring. I mean, this is the thing I was talking about. It's like, this knowledge is so general, I would say, among progressives. It's been discussed in various ways over the decades, that we kind of know about this stuff already. It's still worth reading the book. You get into some pretty important details, but just scroll to the next book. Sixth Extinction. Just, go read that one. That one's a more recent one. It's from 2015, and it won a Pulitzer Prize for general nonfiction. And it describes the mass extinction events of the past and connects them to what's going on right now. Probably worth a read. I'm definitely putting that on my list. And next we have The Uninhabitable Earth, which was published a couple of years later in 2017, and basically argues that the current actions that we are taking won't be nearly enough. Of course, you've heard that by scientists interviewed on various newscasts and whatnot over the past decade. Anyway, so the author in that book is examining disasters that have already occurred and looks ahead to the year 2100 and what climate change will do if we continue on our current path. So Losing the Earth, that one was published in 2019. And basically it says, its subtitle is "We Could Have Stopped Climate Change." You're seeing there, it says "A Recent History." That's kind of the watered down title. The original title was "Losing Earth, the Decade We Could Have Stopped Climate Change." This was published in 2019. So we're talking about from the financial crisis to 10 years later was the decade that change could have happened after Al Gore's book was published. That's, I mean, and what's interesting about this is that pretty well 5 or 6 or 7 years ago, just before COVID hit. So COVID blew a hole in everything, right? But all of the important books and observations about climate change were basically written before COVID, and there's no reason to write any more books. It's all been outside. It's all been analyzed to death. We know what the problem is, and the culprits. Everybody says, well, progressives are always saying, and I think normal people these days, fossil fuels are the problem. Leave it in the ground. And yet, our prime minister, Mark Carney, is going to push more money into fossil fuels.
Very disappointed in Mark Carney. I get it from an economic perspective. I get it. You're like, we're in an energy crisis. We got energy. But like the forest fires, actually, that just in, where was it? In Washington, maybe? It was on the West Coast. There was a forest fire that jumped the river into a major city and burned 640 homes, right? This is a major metropolitan area. This is where, if you live, I live in California, right? Okay. So if you want a big house up in the hills, everyone knows that you're accepting that your house could get burned down, right? It's cheaper there to a degree. It's still Southern California, but it's cheaper because the fire department is not going to be able to get out to your house in a reasonable amount of time. But if your home is located in a city in the suburbs, this should never happen. A fire shouldn't be jumping a major river. And this, in my mind, might be the thing that gets people in America to start to be worried, because it is one of those things where you are like, well, this isn't supposed to happen to me. Like, it's not supposed to happen to me. But I can tell you that it's extremely suppressed. But the entire United States is facing countless natural disasters right now. Like, all over the country, it's facing fires. Is that in Canada? We've got fires in,
in Europe,
fires
everywhere. Right. That's the point.
Everywhere.
And that's the point.
The fossil fuels, John, are linked. Those companies, their activities are linked to the excessive drying of the Midwest. There's scientific data showing that those companies and their actions are what's doing this to America, to the world, right? Like, it's those emissions and those processes.
Yeah. So we need to name names, right? I think we're past the point where we just say the fossil fuel industry, because it's not just the fossil fuel industry. It's the U.S. military. It's anybody who uses excessive amounts of fossil fuels. And the U.S. military is by far the biggest consumer of fossil fuels on the planet.
China might be giving them a run for their money with their Navy, but as of right now, and China's building a fusion reactor.
Yeah.
Why aren't we doing that?
Yeah, well, that's because China actually, here's the thing, is that the overlords, the oligarchs, the people who want to continue to control everything, want us all to think in terms of black and white. They want us to think things are simple.
Yeah.
Because if it's simple, then we're on the black side or the white side. You pick your team that you're on and then you just fight it out, okay? But when people talk about China as though it's the enemy,
China,
as though it's the enemy, right? Well, sure, every society on Earth has bad people doing bad things, no question about it. But is China developing alternatives to fossil fuels at a rate way exceeding the U.S.? Yes, it is. That is a good thing. Sure, the Uyghurs are, being forced to become Han Chinese, and that's evil, because they don't want
genocide. Everyone's genociding. Are we not genociding in America right now? Has Canada not in the past genocided the native peoples? Like, it's just apparently genocide is just go to Africa. You've got 3 genocides that just went and popped off again. I mean, this is not like the violence is a result of the scarcity and environmental impacts of the companies that are running these extractive methods. It's all goes back to scarcity. Scarcity demands violence. Scarcity causes competition. A society that operates on scarcity, like a capitalist society, where the incentive is to grab as much as you can and create scarcity elsewhere to motivate others to do things. The world is finite. Everything is finite. The assumption of exceptionalism, that humans can just do things and there is no consequence, is absurd. Like, if you go out and you go to school and someone pisses you off and you punch them in the face, maybe they deserved it, but there will be consequences. They could have friends. They could jump you and beat the crap out of you. Was it worth it? That's up to you. Did you get the bully? Was it worth it? That's up to you. But at the end of the day, there is the blame goes squarely on the people who traded everybody's future for a year-over-year increase for shareholder profits. Everybody. It's not you. It's not me. And they put the fucking accountability on us. Lower your carbon footprint. Recycle. How about you just stop doing what you're doing and stop killing all the nuclear physicists and fusion engineers at MIT? and
Right.
all the people who discover alternatives. Why is the military, like you said, why is the military industrial complex run on oil and gas? Because they got a deal. They could have changed this a long time ago. It's about money, it's about greed. And
Right.
it's like somehow we've gotten to a point where the worst of humanity, the worst type of person, now runs everything.
Right.
I mean that's and that's what these books were published, but some of them before I was born. That no excuse.
Right.
I wasn't even born. I wasn't alive. I didn't get a choice. I was born into this shit. If I
Right.
had a choice, I would have done things very differently back then because I'm me. Like I would have still fucking rejected the entire societal model. I would have been a hippie. I would have been, but I still would have done something. I still would have done it. I mean, it's like exceptionalism. It won't happen. Don't worry. It's not going to happen. You know, there's always consequences, but these people got so rich, they forgot what consequences are.
Well, also, let's just first of all, I just want to
Sorry, I went off on a tangent. So I
I
apologize.
want to nominate you as a honorary hippie.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I
I
appreciate
come from the generation just after the hippie generation, right? I was 20 years old in 1978, which was the year that punk became a real thing, where people were fed up with the the whole thing in music was glam rock and disco and all this, very narcissistic crap. And punks were exactly opposite to narcissistic crap. And so I think, and I would say the generation of 68 both understood that whereas the individual is really important, um, that collective action is really the only thing that can move us forward.
right.
And the punks were, of course, criticizing the collective action of governments, because governments are organizations of groups of people who do things supposedly because they were hired by the people to do something for the people. But we know they're not doing that anymore. They talk a talk to get elected, and then they just do whatever the corporations want pretty well, right? So this is based on a mythology, and we can get back to the indigenous approach to things.
Yeah.
Um, I saw somebody had forwarded an excerpt from a Jack Nicholson movie recently, and I can't remember who it was, but it doesn't matter. And Jack Nicholson is a hard-assed psychologist, maybe, or something, and he's asking the other actor in this movie, which I can't name, maybe you will know it.
Okay.
He's saying, "So who are you?" And the guy says, "Oh, I'm a nice guy. I work at." No, that's your job. That's what you do. Who are you?
Yeah.
And it's that
Who
Jack
are you?
Nicholson, big teeth. Who are you? You know how he does that thing, and he keeps pressing him. The guy says what he does, how nice he is, how good he is with his family, and so on and so forth. And Jack Nicholson just keeps hammering him that none of that matters. And who are you? And so what he's trying to promote, which is something I completely disagree with, is the notion that at your core, you are an individual and nothing you do matters, and your reputation in society doesn't matter. Some deep psychological thing. It's this post-Freudian bullshit. That's the real you, is this deep psychological something or other that is you as an individual. And it's this whole cult of individualism that has created the problem we're in. It's individuals with their greed wanting to maximize themselves through the process of accumulation. The indigenous perspective is quite the opposite. It is that we are all part of a big family, and that every individual in that family is a reflection of the other. That when you are growing up, you grow up in a society that's supported by your parents, your grandparents, friends. It's a big community. And as you become part of the community, your view as a child, for example, You look into the eyes of the adult, and the adult reaffirms your existence through the interaction. And it's the interaction among people that defines them as people. And they grow in a nurtured community, not only in a kind of nurturing family, but also nature. Your relationship to nature is also a conversation. So everything is interconnected. And the concept of the individual, of course, it's somewhat important, but it's certainly not at the top of the chain. You know, it may become important when a person is in crisis and they need to have, the shaman in the village help them out with their individual issue. But that's not top of the priority. It isn't top of the priority that the individual is the most important thing. It's the whole community and the whole of nature that supports the community. That's a concept that I believe we have to embrace. And
Yeah.
that's our, you said it earlier, and I really believe that that is our way out.
Yeah, it's the only way out, right? Because it's collaboration.
Yeah.
Because clearly, I mean, it all for me comes back to consequences. It really does. It all comes back to consequences. If you are only interested in your year over year, then chopping down massive swaths of the Amazon doesn't bother you because you've got more money in your bank account. The shareholders' pockets are fatter. But at the end of the day, well, you chop down the Amazon and then you remove, let's say 3% of the world's largest carbon sink. Okay, so what happens there? Oh, well, there's consequences for that, isn't there? Oh, what if you just like hunt all of the big predators to death in this ecosystem? Suddenly the prey gets out of control, and then they eat all of the grass or the fauna or the flora,
Right. Right.
and then the entire population collapses because you killed this thing for its fur, or all the rivers get fucked up because they went and killed all the beavers,
Right.
and there were no dams, and
Right.
beavers are a keystone species,
Right.
right? It's really just not. It is. If they were really afraid of something, which is not the law. The law is not sufficient motivation for them to not destroy the planet. It is
No.
actually enabling them.
Oh yeah, it's just a line on their spreadsheet.
It's like what there needs to be real consequences for what is being done. The ICC is supposed to be able to do that. The
Right.
international bodies are supposed to be able to do that. Our governments are supposed to be able to do that.
Yeah.
But because the rich people had enough time to develop a system in which there is no consequence, they are just doing what they want, and they only ever look at what's in front of them and what they want because they've never had any consequences. They've never been touched by the consequences of their actions, and they don't expect to be touched by the consequences of their actions.
Right.
But they're very real, and they are happening.
Right.
And that, I don't know. I struggle with this. Is like it won't stop unless they face consequences. It's not going to stop, right? If someone's a kleptomaniac and you let them go into the store, they just stole a pencil. It's not worth it. They're going to steal a pencil every day
Right.
because they can get away with it. And then they're going to steal an iPad. And
Right.
suddenly that impacts your bottom line. And then they're going to steal out of your cash register. And there's your profits for the day. And it's because you let them steal a pencil
Right.
every day.
Yeah, so it's a very simple way to describe that capitalism is the problem, because the accumulation of capital at the expense of somebody else is a recipe that cannot be sustained. And
Yeah.
I will say there have to be consequences, right? And so in various readings recently, I think it was a book called "This Changes Everything" by Naomi Klein. I was just reading a few pages of that last night,
Mhm.
and it's about the environmental movement and the climate crisis. And she goes through a passage where she describes how the most important thing in most of the protests against mining and extraction, the motivating factor for almost every single protest, which is usually on indigenous land, is that the people want their water protected.
Yeah.
Now, how absurd is that? That the only thing that really keeps us alive is drinking water every day, and
Yeah.
that the people would want to protect that.
Oh,
Imagine, imagine that. I mean, that's what's so absurd about the extraction economy, is that it's going to pollute the things that keep people alive. So when real cynics say, well, maybe that's the big plan. Maybe the big plan of all these oligarchs is to, do away with a huge section of humanity by starving them to death or taking away their water. Maybe the oligarchs are just going to, set aside water for themselves and let the rest of humanity die on the vine. Maybe that's a plan
maybe.
instead of just something that is a byproduct of shareholder enrichment. And then you say, well, that's not inconceivable. I mean, Ray Bradbury wrote a novel, Orwell wrote a novel. They predicted the evil that humanity can impose on other humans. It's not far-fetched
No.
when you look at it. And so people have to wake up to the notion that there might be this really fundamental evil that is running the show.
Yeah. True
And
evil. Like, I
yeah,
think that I want to highlight what you're saying there. Real evil. There's the bad guy, and then there's a genuine disregard for the future of not only the species, but the planet. I'll say this: the planet will be here. 1,000,000 years will pass. All of the pollution, all of the plastic, everything that we've done will eventually be squished down into the mantle, into the core. It will be incinerated, and it will become whatever it becomes.
right.
Our atmosphere will still be here. It'll be different after all of Elon Musk's satellites deposit all of these metals that we pulled out of the earth and then put those in the ionosphere. There's consequences for that.
Yeah.
There's consequences for us letting rich people do whatever they want, but it'll still be here. The planet and life will find a way. Life always does. There's species that don't, there's organisms that don't even use oxygen, entirely anaerobic. They use things like methane here on Earth that we never thought were possible.
Right.
We won't see it if we don't do something. That's the difference. It's not like the planet's going to go anywhere. It will recover. It's a planetary body that operates on a scale of millions of years.
Right.
But we have already changed it. So the question is, do we want to be here at all? I mean, is like really the thing, or would we rather just extract until we've extracted our own future away from us entirely?
Yeah.
I don't think we want that. I don't think you or me or the majority of people have any interest in that at all.
Absolutely not. And that's why I'm going to say it, we the people have to say what we want, and they want death and we want life. It's that simple.
Yeah, good. Yeah.
I mean, when you look at Peter Thiel and Alex Karp and all of these other assholes, and you listen to what they say, they clearly are virtually not, they have no empathy, no compassion. They are some kind of strange being on this planet that is completely psychopathic. And these people should have no positions of power in a society that you and I want to live in. They should have no power whatsoever.
There's only several thousand of them. Literally, there's only several thousand of them on the entire freaking planet.
Right.
And yet still, the billions of people here are seemingly incapable of dealing with several thousand people. I mean, it's not like they have millions of soldiers. Like, it's not like they have these things. It's not like that. They live among you. Above you, yes, there is a ruling class in America,
right?
But they are there.
Yeah. So the thing is that this is why I keep coming back to the notion of culture, because if we embrace a culture of individualism and we embrace a culture of the glorification of the successful individual as defined through capitalism, then we collectively are agreeing to that arrangement. We're agreeing to that formula. And if we can get rid of that culture and replace it with a culture of community, then we stand a chance. But for that to happen, there have to be fundamental changes to the culture. For example, the First Amendment is great. The Second Amendment, I believe, just remind me if I'm wrong, is the right to bear arms, right?
That's correct.
And that particular amendment should be amended. It should be actually removed completely, because what it does is it emboldens the notion that the armed individual is the most important sacred thing in the United States. That every individual has a right to bear arms so that they can individually or collectively, if they all decide to do it collectively, defeat the government. Defeat which government? Oh, you mean the British? Isn't that already done? I think it's already done.
I was
Oh, okay. You know, and then there's the South, the Confederates, right? Okay, so yeah, okay, but it's sort of already done, and now all the guns are used for is like to kill children. So what's it about?
It's an interesting thing in America because a lot of people have different ways, and I think it's like this would be the time to use it. Like, and like there's people who are shooting at ICE. Like, it's very suppressed, it's very hidden. They don't want people to know about it. There's people burning down warehouses. It's very suppressed. They don't want to know about it because that's exactly, you know, if the community says, oh, if people start to see, oh, we can work, this is cool, like this is normal, this is acceptable. I wouldn't be ostracized for fighting back against this. There's not, the consequences aren't, you know, the law no longer is effective deterrent. Because I want to kind of talk about this. I think you'll like this as well. I want to bring up the Social Contract by Jean-Jacques Rousseau here. And I just want to read this because I think,
good for you.
I think that this would be a good thing. I'm going to read it
sure.
to you guys. It's pretty small, but I'll read it. So the theory itself is, finally, each man in giving himself to all gives himself to nobody, and there is no associate over whom he does not acquire the same right as he yields others over himself. He gains an equivalent for everything he loses, and an increase of force for the preservation of what he has. One way of understanding this social contract based on this perspective is to look at the way in which we as individuals become part of a society and the inherent obligations that are associated with it. Basically, society as we know it is composed of a set of rules and obligations that most individuals follow. There are the more obvious rules in the form of laws and regulations which govern the function of society, while at the same time there are the less obvious rules in the form of moral and ethical guidelines, as well as protocols when it comes to proper societal interaction. Example, spitting on someone's face is not acceptable, right? Thus, from an outside perspective, it can be seen that society as we know it is governed by an assortment of rules and regulations, both written and unwritten, which help to control human behavior to ensure that the continued survival of the social group as a whole is based on such a concept that the notion of the social contract comes into effect. In order to be considered as being part of a particular society, it is necessary to ascribe to the rules and regulations that govern it. In essence, a person enters into a social contract with the society in question, wherein, in order to reap the full benefits of belonging to such a society, all that an individual would need to do is follow all rules that govern human behavior and action within that society. However, as seen in the quote, there is apparently a quid pro quo status in the effect, wherein a person apparently has to give up something in order to gain something in return. Right. In the case of the social contract, this takes the form of the individual giving up particular actions and freedom to acquire the certain benefits and protections. For instance, one of the fundamental rights in society is the ownership of property and the capacity to sell it as need be. The particular concept forms the basis of the right of ownership property, right? But I wanted to say that because it always, for me, comes back to the social contract. They've broken the social contract. The laws are breaking the social contract. The social contract is why we follow the law. You only follow the law if it follows the social contract. If you are born into a country, whether that be Canada, whether that be the United States, whether that be Venezuela, the government is actually subject to the social contract, because ultimately the masses choose to enter into that contract. We choose to abide by the law because the government gives us something.
Yeah.
In a world where you are only extracting, those individuals are removing themselves from the social contract. They are breaking it because they are not giving the people enabling them the return that is everything. He gains an equivalent for everything he loses.
Right.
They lose their time, their labor, their energy. They need to gain the equivalent. If they don't, they demean the social contract.
Right.
And you can't tell me that anybody should respect a law that allows the Epstein files and the president to be a pedophile child rapist.
Right.
And that's just cool. Like, what is that?
Yeah.
Right?
Well,
the social contract is more important than the law of the land, in my opinion.
yeah, and the social contract includes a critique of capitalism, because we allow businesses to do business so that they can provide us with things that we ourselves can't make.
Yeah.
And so we give up our time and labor in the form of giving up part of our income to purchase the things that they make. But they're not supposed to operate in such a way that they extract so much from us that we hardly have anything left in our bank accounts to actually go buy the thing that they made. So this whole shareholder thing is essentially contrary to the social contract, because it extracts from society that link that is supposed to exist between governments, corporations, and the people.
Correct.
And so when our wages don't increase for 40 to 50 years, but corporate profits go 1,000 times higher, that's breaking the social contract as well.
Yes.
Right. And so that's the thing that you're absolutely right on to have introduced the social contract into this dialogue, because it really it clarifies so many things, not just how corporatism and capitalism, this crony capitalism, I would say, it is contrary to the social contract, but it also brings up subtle cultural issues that are always in discussion these days due to the cosmopolitanism in our large cities across the globe, where various cultures come in as immigrants, and they transform the society. And so the social contract of the society, its details start to change.
Yeah.
And they change in ways that some people who like the old social contract don't like. And then you get conflict that occurs between more recent immigrants, let's say in our continent, we're all immigrants except First Nations. So it changes the social contract in a very subtle way as the society itself changes. And conservatives, people who don't like change, start to get really aggressive. And that's why you have a rise of the right in societies right now, because it's usually, people who want to preserve traditions from the past, and they're anti-immigrant because they don't like the society changing at all. But the social contract is a very flexible thing within the basic paradigm of I give something to my society, they give back. I pay taxes, I have roads I can drive on, and school and libraries and so on. It's still a very important concept to understand, why things are broken, and that even if we just go back to the basics of re-embracing the principles of a social contract, we'd be way better off.
Yeah. Let me give a cool example of how the social contract operates. So there's a pretty viral video going around on TikTok of basically this guy comes to a skate park with a bunch of kids, and he's a white man, and he decides he's going to be racist and basically taunt the black kids, verbally attack them. He picks up one of their bikes and like throws it. And eventually, I guess he gets this black boy on the ground and wraps his hands around his neck as if to choke him. And so one of the boys pulls out his phone and is recording, but 4 white kids beat the shit out of this white man. They beat the crap out of him. Meanwhile, the other white kids pull this black kid to the side and they check on him. They make sure he's cool, and they do it. Meanwhile, the other dude gets pummeled, and he tried to choke out a boy. So what did the kids do? Importantly, what did the white kids do? They honored the social contract. They said, we're not going to tolerate this behavior. This is our social contract. And even though the political environment and the legal environment protects this behavior, we will not allow it. And they did the right thing. That's very clear. They did the right thing. They defended somebody who was in need.
Yeah, but it goes beyond that, actually, because I just speaking of social media, this very observation came through my social media recently. Some black guy that I had not seen before, a very good commentator, I should have remembered his name, but he made the observation that when he showed a video of a white girl in a classroom beating the shit out of a little black girl, and people are laughing. People in the classroom are kind of laughing. And then in the next few seconds after that, white girl, big white girl, goes after her for a second time. Then a black girl who's about the same weight as the one who's assaulting the other kid comes and grabs her and takes her off the kid and starts beating the shit out of her.
Yeah.
And the clip ends, and the commentator says, you see, in America, if a white person beats on a black person, you let it go. You just let it happen. And only when a black person comes in to try to fix the situation does it become violence. It isn't violence when a white person is doing it against a black person, but when a black person comes to rescue that black kid who's being pummeled, then it goes onto the news as a black person assaulted a white person, not a white person assaulted a black person, and then a black person came to stop the violence. And that's the scenario you described is the social contract in America, if it's working. And that is that a black person can't go in and get that white person off the black kid. Because if a black person does it, then it's violence. But if white kids beat the shit out of the white person who's violent, that's okay.
That's your job, white people. That's your job. Only you can do it. Only you can go and beat up this other white person. Otherwise, the police will shoot them. That's how it is.
Yep.
That's how it is. Like, am I going out, walking around looking to throw hands? No, fuck no. But if someone is assaulting another person, and there's a great comment here, there's a difference and a misunderstanding, and Michael always has great comments, of social contract and social responsibility. If you participate in the social contract, you have a social responsibility.
Correct.
That contract will protect you. If somebody is beating up on me, I would expect the social contract to be, hey, unless if they're trying to attack me and it's clear that I didn't start it, I would expect somebody to help me out, because I would do that. I choose to perpetuate the social contract by my willingness to do that myself, the willingness of those boys to stand up and do something, then brings them into the social contract.
Understood.
It strengthens social responsibility.
Yeah, sure. But for white people only.
Yeah.
The social contract for black people is different. Black people cannot intervene in that situation, because if there's a cop around, the cop will arrest the black person.
Absolutely.
And that's a different social contract. So this notion of some universal social contract, especially in America, is a myth. It's a myth. Ask black people about that situation, and they're going to tell you that story. They can't intervene or they will be arrested. And it's the same situation to do with the people who protest the genocide in Gaza. They get arrested. If a Jewish person objects to a Palestinian demonstration, the cops go in and take out the Palestinian protesters, right? Because there's two social contracts. The social contract says, in our society, the Holocaust is sacred, and all you have to do is say Holocaust, and anybody who's anti-Israel has to be arrested.
Yeah, well, they're
the
not even the same people, dude. They're not the same people at all. They are like, I don't even like.
Are you talking about Israelis, you mean?
Yeah, the people who are, they're not the same. Like, they're not all the same people. A lot of the people there came later because they wanted to annex all of Palestine, and it was part of a larger
We know the
thing.
history. It's the history of Israel. I mean, it's a colonial project. We know that. So,
Yeah.
so getting back to the social contract in the
Yes.
UK, you know, the Palestine Action Organization was taking action to support international law, and so they took action against military equipment that was going to be sent to Israel because it's against international law for the United Kingdom to send military equipment to a country that is known to be committing a crime. It's actually against international law. So Palestine Action was behaving according to international law. And the government of the UK said, oh no, that's a terrorist organization. We've designated it a terrorist organization. So we're going to arrest all the old ladies who hold up a sign saying, I support Palestine Action. So this is another indication of where the social contract has been completely broken, and it's broken by a colonial project that is the last standing major colonial project in the Western Hemisphere, right? And it's being protected by, guess who? The former colonialists, right? So this social contract notion is something that has been completely broken, and it's broken at the UN, and it's broken at our governments, and they're trying to convince us that they're trying to do something. But once you recognize that it's completely broken, then you have to say, well, we need something else. We need a different way of doing things. And like I said before, we have to reassess the entire contract and bring it back to something that more resembles the community spirit of the original contract, which was a community spirit very similar, I would say, to the natural communities that are formed in indigenous places on this earth, and that we can come closer to that way of thinking.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a really good way to put it. I think that kind of ties it all together. The only thing I would say to really kind of add to that at all is that when the social contract suddenly becomes that certain people just get to not be accountable, and that laws don't universally apply. If you're in a business transaction, you would terminate that contract. You would say, like, basically, this contract sucks for me. It doesn't work for me. You know, I have to pay taxes and they make $1 billion and don't pay taxes. Like, that doesn't really work to me. Why is the IRS sending collection letters to people when Jeff Bezos isn't getting a collection letter?
Right.
Like, what does more? So you have to question the social contract.
Right.
And there is not a universal social contract. So it's that community aspect you're talking about, John, that would allow us to develop a collective social contract that has enough weight to truly resist. Because you need to have that collective energy.
Right. And you know, when you receive this contract and you think that this doesn't work for me, that is an individualism framing of things. But if you accept that you live in a community where we don't accept that, then in every action, whether it's an individual interaction with you and a business, or you and another person, you have a bigger vision than just yourself. You say, we don't accept this. And we have the power. And the oligarchs want to make sure that we're always divided and at each other's throats, so that we don't form this sense of community. Because once we do, we are a major threat to their existence, and they know that, and they're going to keep trying to get us doom scrolling and focusing on things that are narcissistic. But we have to form a community, many communities, and all come together with a consensus about what to do in the future.
I think that's perfect. Well, everybody, make sure you go and you support John. You can scan this QR code. It'll take you to his Substack. If you're watching the recording, his link is going to be in the description here. So make sure you guys go and support John. He writes about all of these things. And, you know, he's really invested in kind of exploring these ideas, the social contract as a whole. And I think there's a lot of value in those discussions and that reading to consider. as we kind of decide what we want that contract to be. So,
and if you want, I would say, if I can just recommend Shane's Firebrand project as well. I have to say his analysis of current events is deep and much worth your time and effort.
Thank you. I appreciate that, John. I will be putting out something here in the near future regarding the Iran war and the events of the last weeks. Basically, it should be covering from the 22nd through current as of the 4th. So if you want to kind of get an idea of what's going on and what's happened in that time period, keep an eye out for that. So make sure you're subscribed and I will be sending that out. So everybody, I'm so grateful for you all to join us today. I know John is as well. And we look forward to seeing you for the next dialogue, because of course the dialogue must continue. So we'll see all of you later, and have a great rest of your week. Find some joy, do some art, touch some grass, listen to some music, and we'll see you all soon. Bye-bye.
See you next time.